Teachers of Reddit, whatever happened to the kids in your class that were scary smart? What's they ever make of themselves? Nobel laureate, incarcerated? I had a teacher in high school. Taught US history. Every now and then he'd tell a story of when he first started teaching. There was an insanely smart kid in his class. Just brilliant. Could do anything he wanted. Got accepted to UOFO. Had some problems. Had to leave the school for a semester. No clue what happened to him. Until my teacher visited the Vietnam War Memorial in DC. The big black wall covered in names. That one. Found his former student. He said it was one of the saddest moments of his life. And even when he'd tell the story years later, he'd still tear up a bit over it. That was sad. Thanks for sharing, but dang you and your onions. The top scoring student in my graduating year went to university to study theoretical mathematics, suffered a mental emotional breakdown, and returned to my high school to work as a gardener. It was, by all accounts, some really beautiful mind crap. He was found scribbling equations on the walls of the hallway outside his dorm room. My stepsister is super smart, genius level, has a degree in biomechanical engineering, can't hold down a job because she has a meltdown over stress. As a parent, I worked with a classmate of my daughter in an after-school activity. Her friend was scary smart. In high school he taught himself AP Physics because it wasn't taught in their school. He graduated at the top of their class and was an all-around athlete in 4 sports. Anyway, he went away to school. Full ride scholarship to Columbia. Missed competing in sports. Transferred to a school on the West Coast. Finished his BA in science. Is now teaching HS locally and is the school's baseball head coach. That school and those students are so lucky. He is the nicest guy and will do wonders to help his students. Autistic. I had an autistic boy in my class who could, without paying any attention to what was going on, blurt out the answer to long division or 3-digit by 3-digit multiplication problems. He was bored with the curriculum in my room and would lay his head on his desk and cover it with his math textbook. Then periodically he would yell out random answers in a perfect Pikachu voice to the problem the class was doing on the whiteboard. He was prone to small fits of violence, so while I dealt with them without too much inconvenience, once he went to the junior high school, they didn't, and he was placed in a private school which costs the district $45 a year. I bet he just floated through school. Not a teacher, but my brother's friend was a genius. Got a scholarship, was going to be a chemical engineer, then he was writing code for the synchrotron here in town. Then he was going to med school, then he ran out of scholarship because he couldn't decide what he wanted to do most. Now he owns a moving truck, and from what I hear he loves moving furniture. Finally one that didn't die or go crazy. I teach kindergarten and I had a 4-year-old girl, late September day, come into my class that could read and comprehend at a 6th grade level. After the first month of school she was assigned to a one-on-one tutor that was teaching her 5th grade learning material. By Christmas she stayed in her grade appropriate classes for social reasons. Now, instead of entering her freshman year of high school, she is taking independent study courses and training full-time to be an MMA fighter. So in other words, Batman. Not a teacher but a good friend of my friend's was the brainiac, so to say, in high school. He ended up overdosing on painkillers, I think it was PKs at least, and dying in college. One of the top kid at our school ended up working out at a gas station for like 5 years before disappearing. Buddy of mine was friends with him and said that the love of his life ran off with another guy after they graduated from college. Apparently the kid just checked out after THST and stopped giving any crap about life. Quite a few became university dropouts. I've noticed a pattern. Those kids who dropped out, they were the kids who were very intelligent, but lacked work ethic. Kids, you can't coast on your smarts in university. The few who were scary smart and were driven usually became very successful. Some programmers, some engineers, some lawyers, and politicians. One even went to Harvard, and last I heard he was doing really well. That was years ago though. Don't know whatever happened to him. Also, some of them died. I'm not a teacher, but I do have a story about one particular kid who was gifted. Some Australians may remember this. My mum's friend went to school with a kid who was one of the smartest kids in the state. I don't know what subjects he was so good at, but anyway, when he was about 17 she says he started to do a lot of drugs. It changed him. One night many years later, she had been keeping in touch with him a little bit over the years. He came over to her house unannounced. He was homeless and he asked if he could have a shower. Being friends she said okay. Gave him a meal and they talked for a few hours. Even though he was doing so poorly he was able to maintain an intelligent conversation. About 2 months later she heard about a man who had stabbed a police officer more than 24 times and fled the scene. It was him. He then led the police on a 3-week-long chase over very dense bushland. The professional trackers who had been hired to help the police said they had never seen a man able to move through that area so quickly, even when they followed a trail, which he wasn't. After 3 weeks he was recognized at a cafe drinking a coffee. When the police apprehended him he did not run or protest. He was schizophrenic and had no idea what he had done. He didn't even know he was being chased for 3 weeks. One of the most brilliant undergraduate students I've ever had suddenly fell off the face of the earth midway through the second course he took with me, not even completing the final project. He didn't talk to me again, despite repeated emails and my efforts to help him turn his grade from an incomplete F into the A he was on track to earn. A year and a half later, I happened to run into a young lady who looked uncannily like him on campus, and we exchanged a brief look of familiarity. On a hunch, I emailed one last time, expressing that I hoped he was doing well and that there were no hard feelings, no matter what caused his absence. She replied that she had been struggling with her identity, had a bit of a breakdown that semester when she finally realized she wanted to transition, and was too embarrassed to reach out to me after the way she left things in class, and unsure of how her professors would take it. I tried to express that I was supportive of her as a student, no matter her gender identity, but we lost contact again after a few more emails, and I think she was still ashamed of dropping out. I think she's since moved to a different department. She's a brilliant student, and it bothers me to this day that her schooling was so impacted by her struggle to come out as trans, and by her fears of non-acceptance. I just hope that she's able to apply her mind to the fullest wherever she ends up, and that she gets the credit she deserves for it. What I like about this one is that there's so much hope to it. She's still a bit confused now, and obviously it's not ideal where she is, but I have high hopes that she will find her peace and back to being badass again. I'm a music teacher. I had a student take up instrumental lessons in senior high school, quite late to begin learning as a school student. He blazed ahead and was on track to complete advanced level exams. He quit unexpectedly, murdered his mother and then wrapped her in a blanket before skipping the country. As far as I know, he hasn't been found. It was strange thinking how many hours I spent alone in a room with him. I've always found composing an aid to thinking through all the other issues in my life and work that haven't found a solution yet. Ominous music. If you are posting about yourself, consider the possibility that you may never have been as smart as you might have thought. Depends what you consider to be smart. The dumbest guy I have ever met, a contemporary with next to no people skills, had a double first from Cambridge. He is now, and has been for a long time, a college professor, guy I was mates with in school. He left at 16 and went to be the tea-boy at a local factory. He was just very good at getting on with people, watching and listening, and learning on the job. Very smart in this way, so he eventually ends up as a deputy manager, and then the company gets bought by a US corporation. American management like him so much he is hired and transferred to their head office in Delaware, where he and his family have been now for some 20 years. He is R&D manager, gets paid handsomely, his kids are schooled well, he has a massive house with a pool, a few cars for the family, a boat, international travel, and an apparently happy marriage. All because he is smart enough to get on with people, and education never taught him that. Those who can analyze and always get on with a random guy can do anything. I'm a newish teacher, and I'm very hopeful for all of my students to go out and do big things, but I had a colleague who had a student who went on to city councilman who was pretty smart. Teachers also rave about this one who became a teacher himself. Apparently he was brilliant, a tad lazy though. Laziness is a disease. I don't want to be lazy. I went to a school that had a pretty stellar gifted program, so I knew a half a dozen kids who were incredibly, scary smart. At a school for smart kids, these were the ones who made everyone else look like idiots. First off, all went on to Ivy League schools. 2 are politicians now, still small time local stuff. One will be a senator someday, the other will likely never get past city stuff. He's very idealistic and won't associate with a party. He doesn't have enough money to have ideals, though, but I always vote for him when he comes up in an election either way. Another one just graduated medical school and is an intern, and another is a software engineer. The others, I lost track of. Interesting point, none of them are lazy kids who sit around lamenting about how they could be something if they were only motivated to do so. Not a teacher, but everyone called me a genius in high school. Sadly, I just don't have the motivation to apply myself. I freaking hate these threads. I go into here expecting a treat, like a charming story about a MF trans or something, but then I have to drudge through post after post of internet geniuses talking about how great they are without a hint of irony. There's a story of a MF trans in here somewhere, trust me. I went to school out in the middle of some fields. A lot of the kids in high school were poor and didn't really give two shoots. But this one girl, she moved to America when she was 8, didn't know a lick of English. By the time she was 9 she was at the top of her class. I went to her house once. It was very noticeable how incredibly poor her and her family were. But she just had something in her. She knew she wanted to do something exciting and important with her life. SJE graduated with something like a 5.0 GPA, AP classes, and earned a full ride to Harvard. When I asked her what she wanted to do, she said something along the lines of I don't know, maybe be a brain surgeon and write a book. She couldn't decide what she wanted to do, because she wanted to do it all. I feel sad every time I think about her. She wrote me a letter our junior year, saying she had wanted to be my best friend since middle school. It was more like a poem really, the way she wrote it. I don't know why she liked me. I never hung out with her enough. I couldn't understand her as a person. She was so intelligent and somewhat strange, but she has been such a role model for me since my first year in college. I haven't talked to her since high school, but last I heard she is still at Harvard. I hope she's doing well. If anyone is going to change the world, it'll be her. I've read a lot of these comments that say I was a smart kid. Now I read it in my mom's basement all day, and I've come to a conclusion. The American educational system caters to the bottom middle of the road student. Higher level students are not challenged enough. High school is easy for them and they're able to just coast by on memory alone. Then, they get out into the real world and have no work ethic. I know this holds true for me, and the saddest part is that I'm a teacher and I find myself often teaching to the middle of the road. One got married and is a teacher, another got married and doesn't do anything. A third went to work for a genetics company, where I can only imagine the horrors she will create. She's chaotic evil. I'm from a shithole small town in SWMO. One of kids in my class went to MIT undergrad and then Stanford for grad school. I remember coming back from State University and seeing him at a party. We talked for a minute and I asked how MIT was. He said it was unreal and he was working with a professor in England doing Hodgkin's disease research on mice. I didn't feel the need to tell him I was still undecided. I helped teach stats for a few years in a grad program where I was also a student. My students weren't kids of course, but their career paths now, almost 20 years later, are pretty interesting to me. The super smart ones have generally gone far, if they chose to. Some of them made deliberate choices related to lifestyle and work-family balance that may have limited their career trajectories, but they're still achievers. What's most fascinating is the successes of a few of my former students who were heavy on charisma and, let's be honest, bullshitting ability. They had more of these qualities than they had raw intellect, and they've gotten pretty far up. Personality and leadership can make a big difference. This is my 8th year of teaching, and I got an email this summer from a 7th grader I had my very first year. She's 2 years into college and going to graduate within another year. She's hoping to get a job at Microsoft. I have no doubt she will. So proud. In all honesty, I tend to get somewhat frustrated by people claiming to be unfulfilled geniuses because high school was very easy for them, but they went to college and didn't have the study skills or time management abilities to succeed. There are some legitimate cases where people do have breakdowns, but most of the time, people want to claim that they are victims to rationalize their own inadequacy. Actual geniuses, in many cases, breeze through high school because it's very easy, then get into a very good school, secure positions to build up their resume while in college and tend not to be unemployed. TLDR. Most of you aren't geniuses. A lot of the smart kids at my high school went on to be very successful. We're all in our mid-20s now, and quite a few of the brainiacs are doctors. One kid that I was particularly close to moved to California to test robots or something. That's all I can tell from his Facebook page. It's quite inspiring because we came from the worst school in the city. Parents moved so their children didn't have to attend. We had barely any arts or sports funding, and our textbooks were from the 1960s. Fortunately, we had amazing teachers that pushed and supported us. Teachers might not be the best ones to ask about this since students generally do not keep in touch with them, or at least, that is the way it is where I live. Students on the other hand sometimes keep in touch with each other after graduating. Yeah, here are my 4 smartest college classmates. Imo, class of 2010. 1. PhD in math. Dropped out and now a HS math teacher. 2. Harvard MBA. 3. PhD in econ at Yale. 4. MD PhD at UMich. I'm a substitute, if that counts for anything. I'm only a junior in college, so I know a lot of the students I teach. This one in particular was a good friend of mine. She was ridiculously smart, valedictorian, president of Model UN, sharpest wit you've ever encountered. She graduated and went on to Princeton. She stayed there 1 semester and, because of a whole big fish small pond to small fish big pond crisis, she ended up dropping out. Last seen, she was bagging groceries and living with a guy who knocked her up at 19. Being a substitute counts for a lot in comparison to the parent comments of late. I don't know how a girl with such an intellect could make a mistake as big as getting knocked up at 19. The valedictorian we had last year is a mathematics upper level physics wizard. His goal is to find a job teaching science courses where he can get grant money to fund his research into some crap I can't even pronounce, much less spell. Interestingly, this year we had a brilliant graduate go into journalism, quit, and become a member of the clergy. This thread is filled with negativity, so on a more positive note, in elementary school we had this program that would take some of the accelerated kids out of class for a few hours once a week to take some more challenging, but fun classes. There were no grades or anything. The intention was to spark an interest in learning beyond the boring repetitiveness in the standard classroom. We'd have mock court cases, learn about ancient mythology, computer programming, architecture, etc. This was always my favorite day of the week. That began in 4th grade and students were selected based off of their scores on state tests. It's incredible when you look back and see how well 90% of those kids did through HS and college. Everyone in the top 20 GPAs at graduation was also in the program. The majority of kids went to Ivy League schools and are studying to be doctors and lawyers. But to keep the theme of this thread going, one kid went on to try and rob our local bank for drug money, failed, and fled by foot to another bank further down the street. Our most brilliant student in high school, who left 2 years early to attend a prestigious college at the age of 16, now works as a secretary at a trucking company. Story told to me by my teacher. A kid in 9th grade was taking senior college level classes. The current one with this teacher was a basic computer science class. Now the kid, being so smart and young compared to the rest of the class, was often teased and picked on, mostly by one jerk. Well, one day he's on his laptop having finished his work early, and the kid next to him is once again teasing and making fun of him for whatever reason. Keep in mind, it's towards the middle of the school year, so a big midterm project was due within a week, and each person had worked on it for a good 2-3 weeks. Anyways, the genius calmly turns to him and says in the middle of being made fun of, "Hey, your email is randomguy123 at whatever.com. Right, the guy making fun of him pauses and goes yeah. Why the genius gets up and walks away without another word. Fast forward to the end of the week. All the projects are due, and the jerk claims his internet and computer have been down not functioning correctly for the last week. The teacher, having heard this excuse before, tells him to open his laptop and simply show him what he has. The jerk opens his computer and logs onto his email. He sees he has a new email with the subject open, and without a thought clicks it to read what is most likely spam. Immediately, hundreds of websites begin to open. The antivirus is going nuts attempting to block all the input. P with insanely loud audio begins to play in a few of these windows, and the class is laughing hysterically as he attempts to stop the incoming viruses and pop-ups. Suddenly, the computer simply shuts off. The teacher tells him to leave it off and figure it out at home, and to bring in the project tomorrow. Suddenly, the computer reboots and returns to the starting screen, as if nothing happened. He cautiously goes to open his email, and nothing is there. Every email and contact is wiped clean. He opens his Word documents, his random folders of programs, games, etc. All gone. It's been the equivalent of factory reset. The kid is broken. Speechless, the class is filled with murmurs, and rumors begin to flow. The teacher settles them down and tells everyone to go back to work. Then he spots the genius in his usual seat, arms crossed, and what looks to be a slight grin, patting the jerk on the shoulder. He looks at him and goes, "I would love to help, but I'm going to do what you should have since the beginning of the year. Nothing at all." TLDR. Kid bullied for being super smart hacks and doxes his bully, destroying the bully's computer and midterm project. The best part of the story is that there was no actual proof that the little kid did anything wrong. Turns out he wasn't scary smart, just barely did anything other than study to seem scary smart, then dropped out before she graduated, got pregnant and is now supported by the older man who got her pregnant. One of my fraternity brothers would qualify as scary smart, just graduated with a degree in human biology and plans to become a doctor. Spent his last semester driving 400 miles each weekend to work at a hospital in his hometown. I've never seen anybody who could constantly drink, eat once every couple of days, and thrive on minimal sleep do so well in school. He'd often tell me how he should start studying for a neurobiology or genetics test in a few hours instead of playing video games, only to go take the exam and walk out with an A+. Socially, he was a bit inept. I shared some of his interests so we could get along well, but for 95% of the Greek students at my university he just couldn't relate. I suppose it's a trade-off for his incredible intellect. Either way, both myself and all of my other brothers acknowledge that he'll end up making more money than he'll know what to do with by 30. First, I must say that I teach students with autism. Severe autism. One of the younger students has a photographic memory for both auditory and visual information. Unfortunately, his behavior and sensory processing can make it difficult for him to further develop his natural genius. I was one of the top 10 guys in my class. Then I got into med school and quickly found myself in among the bottom 10% of the class. Med school can do that to you if you're not 100% focused and committed to it. Yet, most people don't fully understand what smart actually means. Some people are freaking smart. A guy in my graduating class of high school had an innate fascination with physics. Luckily for him, our school's physics teacher was a genius member of Mensa and all that, so he would spend all of his free time with said teacher working on college level physics. Ended up going to college double majoring in physics and mathematics, then went on to study and teach in Switzerland while obtaining his master's in theoretical physics, is now at an Ivy League school pursuing his doctorate in theoretical physics as well. Haven't seen him in some time, but an absolutely brilliant guy and a genuinely nice person. In kindergarten I was reading Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone to the rest of the class, and by grade 4 I was reported to have a collegiate or above reading level. I was labeled gifted and was the English wunderkind. Now I am about to enter university with acceptable, but not spectacular grades, and I spend my spare time either in front of a screen in a dark room or smoking weed doing prescription drugs. WOOOOO. Yet, the wunderkinds get this effect. pretty consistently. Fast brain development isn't necessarily indicative of long-term genius. I always feel bad for them when they are dislocated from their peers and pushed into high-pressure college educations they may never have been meant for had they developed at the standard pace. Wunderkinds tend to be pretty psychologically ravaged come the mid-20s. I was good friends with a super smart kid from about 7th grade through graduation. He had a mental breakdown at the beginning of his junior year of college, dropped out and moved back in with his parents. Not sure what his job is now, but he still lives with his parents at 33 years old. Teachers of Reddit and parents, never, ever tell a child he/she is gifted or smarter than the other kids. By all means congratulate and encourage them, but never give them the impression that they don't have to work as hard as everybody else. Children will take it literally. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.